No, louder. There we go. Hello. Welcome to the first meeting of the newly formed Communities and Place Policy and Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Finnegan and I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. I'll be supported by my Vice Chair, Councillor Jeffrey, and our other officers and directors. Thank you for attending this evening. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if you hear an alarm, please go to the nearest fire exit located at the rear of the chamber and then to the central point outside the Lind Cross pub, better known as Spoons. I stress outside the pub, not inside the pub. May I also remind everybody in the chamber to please switch off your mobile phones or put them on silent mode. If members wish to speak, please could you raise your arm. Please remember to turn the microphone on before speaking and turn it off when you have finished. I want to thank you as accepting me as chair. In my opinion, any committee with the word communities in it is the best committee to be on. We have a fantastic group of members in this committee, some with a wealth of experience and others are going to bring something new and fresh. I know you are here because you're passionate about communities, so we're going to do our best to be effective for the communities we serve. We also have scrutiny in our title, so it's essential that we scrutinise the policies and do our homework in advance as far as possible. As many of you are new to this type of committee, I'd appreciate it if acronyms and sort of technical terms are kept to a minimum or expanded on. Please be assured there are no stupid questions. If you are thinking it, it's very likely that others are thinking it too. So please ask, and Councillor Jeffrey will answer. Okay, so we'll move on to the first agenda item, which is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence tonight, please?
We have apologies from Councillor James Brooke and from Councillor Claudia Fisher.
Thank you. Item number 2 is minutes. As this is the inaugural meeting of the committee, we have no previous minutes to approve. So we'll move on to agenda item 3. Sorry. Yes,
hello, just to say, I'm pretty sure Councillor Bateman is going to be here tonight, but I know she often struggles from her school to get here on time. So I'm sure she will eventually make it.
Thank you. So item number 3 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest in tonight's meeting? Take that as no interest to declare. Item number 4 is announcements from the Chair or Chief Executive. There are none tonight. Take it, that's right. Thank you. Item number 5 is resolution of call-in decisions. To consider any matters referred to the committee for a resolution in relation to call-in of a decision. We have none of those either. Item number 6 is response of the full council or cabinet. For us to consider the full council or cabinet, we have none of those either. So great, we've moved straight to agenda number 7. Agenda item number 7 is Horsham District Community Asset Transfer Policy. You can find this on pages 3 to 14 of your pack. This draft policy has been developed to ensure, as far as possible, HDC's community assets are retained and managed for the benefit of Horsham in the light of local government reorganisation. The policy offers a transparent and consistent approach for applications and decision making. Councillor Clark, Jeffrey, Livingston, Lauren Kelly and myself have raised some comments in advance of this meeting. I hope you've all taken time to review the policy in advance. I'd like to hand over to Andrew Smith, Head of Housing and Community Services, to report on the draft Community Asset Transfer Policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, members. As the Chair has said, we've been asked to develop a policy that enables the Council to transfer community assets to towns and parishes and to community groups in the light of local government reorganisation to protect those assets for our residents in the Horsham area. We have, and I make no apology for this, we have adapted and adopted policy, which was produced earlier this year by another West Sussex local authority. We wanted to develop a policy for the district. There are a number of unitary policies there. I looked at the one for Dorset and it's very good, but we were very concerned that we would have a policy that related to Horsham, a local authority. This is an initial draft, members. It is not oven ready by any means. So we are on a fact-finding mission this evening. The timing has been good that we've been able to bring this to you at an early stage. As the chair has said, we've had input from herself, from Councillor Clark, from our monitoring officer, and we may not be able to answer your questions if you have them, but we will relay them, think about them and find answers. And the idea then is to redraft the policy or amend the policy when we've had all those comments and input from yourselves and from other officers as well, before it is recirculated. One thing that is, we have been advised will be different is that it is for cabinet member sign-off. The informal cabinet have reviewed the policy already, and we've been advised that under the new constitution, the cabinet member can finally sign it off. One of the things that the administration was keen was that we adopted the policy as soon as was practical, but of course it's got to be fit for purpose, and therefore having your input at this early stage is important. I think that's all I want to say for the moment. I'll hand back to the chair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that report. That's great. Thank you. Do we have any other comments on this policy? Councillor Jeffreys.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got a few questions relating to the policy as it stands. A few questions that spring. First question that springs to mind for me, reading the draft policy, is if an asset is disposed of by the way of a lease, in the event that the district council ceases to exist during the term of that lease, what is the process from there? I appreciate this is a first draft, but do we have an indication of what the process would be if the authority ceases to exist during that lease period? Thank you.
I will have to take that away and look at it, Councillor Jeffreys. I don't know. I don't know whether our head of property might be able to give any comment on that. If I may, Chair, and invite Liz to comment, but I don't know.
Under normal circumstances, you would just novate it across to the new party, but this is quite a different circumstance, so I think there might be different legislation that will come into place here.
Thank you.
Sorry, I can't hear. The hearing loop seems to have gone off, so forgive me. Thank you for that presentation. I understand why we need this policy. It's a good idea. And I understand about cabinet sign-off. I think I said in the report that any transfer of assets in parishes would be in consultation with local members. Is that still correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Where to start? First comment is that the CG are basically the issue of certain of the assets are not covered by this policy because some of the assets over £500,000 would be done by council and under £500,000 would be done by the governance committee. So that's one area that's not really been covered or recognised in this policy that needs to be covered. It might be premature, but in my questions to officers, basically I asked about in the policy the methodology to hand over the assets, the valuation of the assets to us, and how do we address the issue of income from the assets, which isn't covered in this policy. I'm not expecting an answer tonight, frankly, but I hesitated as to whether to go through all of this, and then I thought, well, might as well in public. Why not? And where would the income go post-disposal? And how would that impact us or the future? I don't know. As a corollary to this, how do we deal with assets that might be in a poor state or medium state when somebody taking over the asset might want capital or might want money, capital or REVIX, I'm not sure, whichever. There's no mention in the policy, implied or otherwise, as how HDC might sweeten the deal in this case. As part of this asset disposal for me in certain cases, I can see there's an issue of competency or management, what's the word, professionalism. Is the body who's going to take over the asset competent to take it over? I can see parish councils thinking, oh, we want the car parks because it's really, really good. Yeah. And we'll make them free. Yeah. So who's going to run them? How are they going to be run? Who's going to monitor them? Who's going to maintain them? And who's going to repair them? All of these things that we take for granted, how do we know that the people who are taking over the assets are competent in the professional sense, is what I'm saying. No mention of that in here. When we look at the financial implications on page 4, the second bullet point, the question for me is who defines it? Also, how do we ensure that the proposed asset transfer is in line with the parish council or the body that's taking it over, their objectives, rather than they just make them up because it's something they want to catch hold of? On page 4, the last paragraph mentions an asset lock concept. The issue here for me is, how do you find out if the asset is going to be sold? I mean, what strings or what safeguards are put into place? That's not clear. And I think it has to be made clear to the people who are taking over the asset. How does the council find that the asset is being run properly or not? In other words, there's no flashing lights or no warning mechanism. So somebody might pick up an asset that's perfectly good that we hand over to them, and they run it into the ground and don't look after it or maintain it properly. Then what? How do we retrieve it? In other words, we need to write into this policy some mechanism, a right of first refusal to retain or recover the asset prior to it being sold or run into the ground. I think a lot of work needs to be done on this policy, frankly, before it goes to Cabinet. Sorry, the timelines may be short, but it has to be done properly. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Any other comments from other members? Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Chair. Just another comment that I'd like to put forward. In reading the policy, although organisations who are considered to take on community assets will have to demonstrate provisions within their legal structure to ensure assets remain for community use, what measures could be implemented to ensure that ongoing community use is protected once that transfer is concluded? Obviously, I make reference to the asset lock that's mentioned in the papers, but as far as I'm aware, that only applies to prevent the asset being sold, as I've read it, moving forward. So who would police that is what my question is, I suppose. I think we need clarification on who would police that, who would be checking up on whether or not those assets are still being used for the intended purpose, because the whole point of this asset transfer is to try and prevent these assets being lost in a new unitary authority. But my question is it what's the point if there's going to be no policing of that? It just seems to me it would be a pointless exercise if there wasn't a mechanism in place to ensure that was the community asset use of those facilities was there in perpetuity. Thank you.
Would you like to respond to any of those comments?
Only to say thank you very much for those comments. Again, we're collecting them, and we will need to think about how we revise the policy to take into consideration. I think something that Councillor Clark and Councillor Jeffrey certainly overlapped on is how these things are maintained, how they're sort of monitored, that they're not just lost by another way, i.e. sold or run into the ground. So these are things we need to take on board, and we will do that. I'm very pleased that we brought the policy to you now, because these things we need to consider. This is new for us, and we've got work to do. And Councillor Clark was quite right when he said that. He came and sat by my desk. Thing is, people know where to find me, so they come and sit and talk to me, which is great. And Councillor Clark had outlined those concerns to me in a conversation a week or so, and so we are going to take those things on board. At that point, we felt we'll take the policy as it is, we'll gather all the comments, all the input, all the red flags that we as a team will need to take back and implement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Trollope.
Thank you, Chair. On the surface, I think it's a really good idea, and it's very appealing. The only question I have, and it's rather a hypothetical one, is we yet don't know what the unitary authority, or what the authority is going to be, and we might find for a asset X or asset Y that at this moment in time, yeah, let's give it to the parish, but then we discover that, you know what, actually I think it would be better seated with this new authority. So I mean, is there a mechanism that we can think, oof, no, we kind of change our mind on doing this, and based on what we learn later on in the process?
Do you have any response to that?
I think one thing that I'm pretty clear on is that when a community group or a town or a parish wants to acquire the asset from us, there will be a fairly rigorous process to go through from that particular organisation wanting the asset and us looking at whether that is the right thing to do. So it is each case on its own merits. And it's a very interesting question. We might think in the bigger picture, it would be safer for that asset to remain under the unitary. So that's something we will consider, councillor, yes. But again, it's a bit like having an overarching sort of safeguarding policy, which sets out the big things, but then under that is all the processes and procedures that you go through. I'm just using safeguarding as an example, and those are the things that we have to work out, and this is why this is so useful.
Thank you. Councillor Utan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I just query what sort of time frame this is intended to go through? Is it before it becomes a unitary, during the process of being a unitary, or is it possible that it happens after being a unitary?
I think the intention is, councillor, that we have this adopted before there's a unitary. I think one of the reasons to do this early was to make sure that we as a district council had the policy in place so we could do these things.
Councillor Vickers, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm sure we're not the first authority that's been through this process, so presumably we're not going to reinvent the wheel. We can find out how other authorities have actually transferred those assets and whether there have been any hiccups along the route.
Yes, and it's interesting when you look at what Cornwall have done, the number of assets that have been transferred since Cornwall became a unitary, which was quite a while ago, is really rather few. Now, the West Sussex Authority that we copied from, cribbed from, adapted, our intention is to speak to them. I suspect that nothing has happened practically yet. And I think for the reasons that we've described this evening, they wanted a policy in place. So I can't see there's going to be a great rush of transferring assets, but it's essential, I think, that we have something in place that enables us to do that, should we as a council think it is the right thing to do. But in terms of Blue Peter, here's one I prepared earlier. I mean, even Cornwall, and I know Cornwall quite well, and I know some of the things that have been transferred. There's not many in all those years. So,
Councillor Vickers, do you have any other questions? Councillor Vickers, did you have any other question there? No. Councillor Trollope.
Thank you again, Chair. The copy paste approach, I do it a lot at work, and I think it's a great way to start. I'm just curious, and it's more just curiosity than anything else. What things have you actually had to localize for HDC? I mean, 99% of the text is the same, but what's the 1% that you might have had to adapt? Or is it literally a carbon copy?
It wasn't a carbon copy, but I think we needed to sort of think about it in terms of the changes that's going to happen with the local government restructure, whereas the policy that was developed by the other local authority was more of a generic asset transfer policy and had more of a focus on transferring to the voluntary sector.
Thank you. Councillor Bateman.
Yes, when reading the paper and it talks about what assets can be transferred, I have in mind an asset within my own ward, which Horsham District Council promised would be of community benefit and for the community. Unfortunately, Horsham District Council didn't manage to get round to actually delivering on that. So I'm just wondering whether or not there is the potential to ensure that in those situations, those assets can be transferred as well, the ones that ought to have been delivered for community benefit, but perhaps didn't quite make it to the table in time.
Thank you. I know there's a list being prepared at the moment of all of the assets being prepared at the moment. Has anybody else got anything to add to that? I think that could be noted. Thank you. Councillor Clark.
And just remind everyone that I said that some assets are not covered by this policy. So so we can't give a blanket to Councillor Bateman's request because they might be part of those assets that can't be transferred. Just a hint of caution.
Thank you. Councillor Bateman, did you have anything else?
I would just like Councillor Clark just to elaborate a little bit because I'm struggling to understand the specifics of what he's getting at. Sorry.
Was that due to the value, Councillor Clark? Would you like to?
Well, some of the CGR, some assets are covered by the governance committee, and some assets can only be disposed of by council that are covered by the constitution. So not all assets are covered by this policy, which was my point. And I think the monitoring officer made the same point because I've had that conversation.
And that's not yet specified in the policy. If that's what you've raised. As far as I understand, a comprehensive list is being prepared of every asset to be considered. Although the language in the policy would have to be clear what might be included. Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Chair. Just one final point of clarification from me at this moment in time. There's obviously a section in this policy about VCOs, so voluntary and community organisations. There's already some well-established community organisations, community partnerships. You've got parish councils that will also be interested in community transfers potentially. But what my question looks at is during the period where asset transfers will be potentially occurring once a unitary authority is established, or before unitary authority is established, I should say. Are there any plans to communicate the opportunity to any new VCOs coming forward, who, if they've not been as long established as existing groups, that the opportunity may be available to them, and to provide them with some guidance on how they could potentially apply for an asset transfer, or whether or not they would be eligible for one? Because I think that would be useful to produce some guidance to go accompany any finished article in terms of an asset transfer policy, just to help guide those groups who, let's face it, this is not going to be a straightforward process, just to give them that guidance so that we can get the best outcome for any asset that is transferred and ensure that it is actually in the right hands and they are capable of looking after it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Jeffrey, and I think that would certainly be our intention, that any qualifying organisation, clearly our towns and parishes and community organisations, even if they've been around for 100 years or one, would have that opportunity to apply for that asset transfer, and then that will be considered within the framework of what will come out of the policy in terms of the process that we would go through.
Thank you. Did anybody else have a comment? I'll come back to you in a second, Councillor Trollope. Your question been answered, Councillor Butler. Thank you. Councillor Trollope.
Thank you very much again, Councillor. Sorry, Chair. I think I know what asset Councillor Bateman is referring to. I just wanted to make sure, though, that this list that's being prepared, will it be done will it be reviewed with all of the councillor members, and will we have the ability, or will there be a process for us to request for any item not on that list to be on the list, or even on the contrary, to say something we feel for whatever reasons, can we ask for a review for it not to be on the list?
So we're producing a comprehensive list of every single asset that we own, which will go from the smallest patch of grass on an estate somewhere to, Swan Walk car park or whatever else we may own. That's a really detailed piece of work, because what you know as a local green, somebody else might know as something else, and we might know it as something else on our database. So we're bringing together every single piece of land. We're cross-checking what it's known as. So property call it this, parks call it that. We're talking about the same thing. We will have land registry details. We will have any lease details. We will have the precise location of it in terms of its GIS, whatever it is, location. And then that will be the basis of the conversations we have around transfer. There's no reason why councillors can't see that. It's not secret information.
Councillor Butler.
Yeah, thank you. Would that include assets not yet handed over to the local authority? So including new developments that have assets that are due to be handed over?
That's a really good question, Councillor Butler, one which I don't know the answer to, but we will find out.
Councillor Livingston.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Andrew Smith for his response to my earlier question about transfer of some land to Lower Beeding Parish Council, which has been ongoing for nearly 2 years. Does he have any further update as to how that's progressing?
I would have to hand over to my colleague, the head of property, for that, because I don't know. Do you know anything? No, we'll need to find out for you, councillor. Yes.
Have any other councillors got anything else they want to discuss on this matter before I go to non-members? Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Chairman. As you know, I'm not a member of this committee, but I would like to just bring something up. Obviously, the real nitty-gritty of whether community assets are going to be of value to community groups or turn out to be liabilities can only be assessed once the complete list of assets is released by the council. And I already hear, and this is hearsay only, I already hear that other authorities are claiming assets which could be theirs or could be ours. We just don't know at the moment. Will this be agreed between us and other authorities before the final list is released? And when that has been agreed, will the list be released to us in fairly quick time, so that parish communities and other potential asset holders can start considering whether or not it's going to be a liability or an asset to them? Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, do you have any idea on the timings on that to answer Councillor Knoll?
Timing wise, I can't give you a firm timescale, but within the next couple of months, I hope. And that it's being produced on a parish by parish or unparished area, so we'll be able to go to Pulborough, Cowfold, wherever, to say here's what we've got for your area.
Okay, and the other question about questions being raised by other authorities who think that they may own those assets or they may not. And I'm referring to car parks and land ownership that may or may not be owned by West Sussex rather than Horsham District Council.
I assume we know what we own. Yes.
I'm not aware of what you're referring to.
We just need to have a ready answer for other authorities when they question us, that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Ellis-Brown.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of points have been raised, very valid ones, one to be to consider going forward. But I think some of those are points that raised are outside of a policy. We are considering a policy here, and a policy is a statement of position and values. And I think a lot of her this evening is getting much more detailed. The details that would be covered by maybe a separate process or a standard operating procedure to give you the details. But I also draw attention to 6.1, which would address a lot of the points that have been raised. The terms of any disposal, including freehold transfer, will be determined on a case-by-case basis, and the council will consider the specific circumstances of the applicant, sustainability of any business case, the proposed asset and the intended use. That would cover a lot of the points that have been raised this evening. I wouldn't expect to see a lot of the points raised this evening in a policy. I would expect to see that in a process or a standard operating procedure that supports the details of assessing those business cases that come forward that wish to take on an asset. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis-Brown. I agree that a policy should be high level, at the umbrella, with standard operating procedures or working practices sitting underneath. So this should be a high level document. Thank you. Any other comments from any other members tonight? Okay, well, the recommendation was that the council approves Horsham District Community Asset Transfer Policy as set out in the appendix. I think we all agree it's prudent to have such a high-level policy as soon as possible, but I think with all the comments raised tonight and as explained, we have many issues still to address to get this quite right. So what I would like to suggest is that at a minimum we have Councillor Clark, Councillor Jeffrey and myself review the next iterations of the policy to ensure that the comments from tonight have been incorporated where applicable. And then we would agree amongst ourselves whether we feel that the policy is ready to move to the Cabinet Member for approval. Is there anybody else who'd like to be involved in the next round of review? Councillor Bateman, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Lambert as well, thank you. So if we have a sort of a subgroup and we review the next iterations, I think that would be good. So do I have a proposer for that suggestion? Councillor Jeffries, thank you, and a seconder. Councillor Vickers, thank you. So we will take that aside with the next versions and get comments back to you. Thank you. Okay. So are we all in agreement with that proposal? Agreed? Thank you very much. Andrew, do you have a timescale for us for the next iteration following tonight's comments?
I would hope within the next few weeks, but there are a number of consultees and we need to do this work at pace but thoroughly, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Trollope.
Thank you, Chair. Just a suggestion, if it's helpful and useful, I mean, I would happily raise my hand to vote in favour of saying that I think this is a very good start, you know, a sort of a pre-indicative, you know, statement of support to it. Something along those lines.
Thank you. I think we all agree that we require a policy and this is a good start, but we've got a lot of comments to incorporate, which we will do as a subgroup and get back. Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda number 8, item agenda number 8. This is Highwood Community Hall Function Room Venue. This page is 15 to 18 of your pack. There's a fair bit of history with this agenda item dating back to 2008 and more recently with a local consultation. We received some comments from Councillor Jeffrey in advance of the meeting, thank you. And I hope you've all had time to review. I'm going to hand it over to the Head of Property and Facilities, Liz, to provide us with an update. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've just prepared a short presentation really to take us from the background through to the consultation and there what the next steps are. So it has got a bit of a history. So in 2017, it started off there with developing a sustainable, collaborative, self-financing and self-governing community facility, which then moved on to 2022, and approval was given at council for the building of a community hall and a nursery, but that didn't proceed because of increased costs and viability for the nursery provider. Then in 2025, a colleague here, Nick, made a presentation to informal cabinet and provided background to the project and also highlighted that because of the change in the status of the drill hall, particularly, there's excess capacity among local community halls, and that it wasn't supported by officers to actually move to a full-scale community hall facility. Informal cabinet, however, requested a consultation exercise was carried out with the community to understand if a hall was built, what it would be used for. So in terms of the consultation exercise, just a bit of detail, there were drop-in sessions, online surveys, printed leaflets, where we achieved 89 responses, mainly from the local estate, and we had 30 people that came to have a chat to us at the fire station community room there. So the interest was for fitness and wellness classes, quite localised, social gatherings, community meetings, and then the workshops. 55% of the respondents said that they would attend on a weekly basis to the facility if it was built, and only 2% said that they were interested in taking an active role in actually managing it. So that's actually 2 people, because we're of the numbers that responded. In terms of design, looking for a modern, visually appealing facility that reflected the general Highwood design. Also, adequate parking and flexible space layouts were required, as well as well-managed traffic flows. They were very concerned about disruption to the local roads, which are currently private at the moment and will be adopted in due course by West Sussex. So of their concerns, 80% of the extra comments mentioned potential increased traffic, parking shortages and issues with access through there, because you have to come through the whole estate to get to the site. They were concerned about noise and general antisocial behaviour at late night parties, and others questioned whether there was a necessity for this and whether money should be better spent on other things in the community. So I'll just go on to the next steps then. Cabinet meeting is on the 21st of May, and at that meeting we're recommending funding request to 150,000 for capital to carry out the immediate measures, because Berkeley Homes have built some football pitches there, playground and a mooga, but it needs security, so we don't get people driving onto the football pitches. We also need to bring down some fencing and get rid of debris there. Create 12 car parks just for the ad hoc use of those pitches, not the formal use of those pitches yet. And we're also seeking 200,000 revenue to start the process for the design of a hall facility. That's a presentation. I'm just going to ask my colleague Nick if you wanted to add anything to community concerns.
No, I don't think it's a surprise that whenever you're proposing to put anything up in a location that's been active for 5 years, as Highwood have, it's always seen as something coming in. So I think the concerns that the community have are quite natural. You know, is the parking going to be adequate? Is it going to increase noise, disturbance? I think that's a fairly common sort of concern that we would have. So, like I say, it's no surprise that they've raised that as part of the consultation. We have to remember the consultation asked, what would you use a facility for, not whether you wanted one. And so I think that the consultation showed that they would use it if one was there, for the fairly average things that we would expect from a modest facility on an estate like that. But I think Liz has covered it perfectly adequately with the information that we have available.
Thank you. Thank you both for that update. Councillor Butler, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just curious to know, I'm new to as a member here, why there was no planning put in for the fencing that's required for the pitches, the mooga, the parking. Was that not considered as part of the planning when it was initially approved? Why is it asked for now?
The developer provided, as part of the planning, the facility. It's just extra security elements that, in terms of travellers and the like coming onto the site, that is not a requirement for them. As well as at the present time, we've got high fencing around there, which they have provided, but the residents, as part of the consultation exercise, said that one of the things that they would like is actually for that fencing to come down and for them to actually have access through the site, so that it would, by having access, it's more secure because people are on there as opposed to being behind a big high fence.
Yeah, so just to give confirmation on that, the fencing we're talking about is sort of like builders hoarding that's around the proposed site for any facility. It's been there 5 years, it's looking pretty shabby, things have grown behind it. Residents that immediately look over that can't see the play area, the Mooga or the pitches. So because they can't see, there's a fear. They can hear voices and noises. They'd rather view it than have it blocked off. So again, that seems a reasonable request for that.
Thank you. Councillor Bateman.
Can you elaborate a little bit about the fencing that you're proposing? I'm asking because obviously we've been doing quite a lot of work as to girls and how they feel using spaces like Moogas and football pitches. And one of the feedback points we're getting is that when you seal something in with very few access points, the women using those spaces feel less safe. So I'm just looking for a little bit more detail on the design aspects that you're seeking to implement, if that's possible.
Yeah, it's generally kind of bollard type fencing, so you know so that vehicles can't get over and abunds and things like this. So it's to stop the vehicles getting in as opposed to pedestrians. Yeah.
Councillor Vickers.
Yes, I'm sorry, on the bollards, are they going to likely to be those ones that you can drop in case of an emergency of some sort?
There will be some areas that will have extra access ways, yeah.
Planning application, any idea when that might come forward? I know you've got to go out for a design and get somebody to draw it up, but have we got a time frame in mind?
It will probably be towards the end of the year. One of the reasons why we want to put in this kind of small amount of car parking and do the kind of bollard fencing is so that it can be used on an ad hoc basis over the summer, but to formally use it, we need to have other things in place, which in the report, actually, I didn't mention that, in the report, we need to have changing rooms if we're going to have girls' football. And so that would be part of an additional element to be constructed.
And the Mooga pitch, when would that fit into this time frame?
The Mooga's finished and it's already there, but people can't access it because it's got this hoarding fence around it. Yeah.
Well, thank you for the update. Any other questions from members? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. No, I think it makes perfect sense to ask for this money to put in the ability to use what is already there. It's certainly a step forward in the right direction. I also think it's sensible to provide some funds to see where the future will bring. I mean, obviously there's a surplus of leisure facilities around the place, and with other halls around that area. So whether you need another one or not, but you'd need changing facilities. So that scope and that idea needs to be explored. And of course, you've got the drill hall, assuming that goes ahead, which will provide more than enough capacity. So I think the whole thing makes sense. Thank you.
Any other comments before we move on to item agenda number 9? No, so thank you very much. Okay, item number 9 is overview and scrutiny annual report 24-25. This is pages 19 to 30 of your pack. It's a really comprehensive report that covers everything from animal welfare policy to building control fees. Councillor Clark was the chair of overview and scrutiny in the last municipal year. The report was presented to the other policy and scrutiny meeting last night, which is one small amendment from Councillor Livingston. I'm going to ask Councillor Clark if he would like to discuss anything further with regarding the report.
Thank you, Chairman. As I did last night, but there are more people here from the last overview and scrutiny. Just a personal word of thanks to the Task and Finish members and chairman of the Task and Finish groups for the work that was done on the Task and Finish work in the past year, that we had quite a lot that were carried through, and some will be finishing in the summer, like the best one, which will be finishing. And of course, Councillor Bateman is going to have the delight of going through it at the next agenda item. If there's any questions on the report, I'm quite happy to take them, Chairman.
Does anybody have any questions for Councillor Clark on this item? No. So, well, thank you very much, Councillor Clark, for all your efforts in chairing the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and preparing this substantive report. Thank you. So the recommendation is that the committee is recommended to refer the report together with the Overview and Scrutiny work programme to full council for noting. Are we all in agreement? Thank you. Okay, item number 10, final report for the Fair Space and Task Finish Group. This is pages 31 to 58 of your pack. This report provides observations and recommendations relating to the provision of outdoor space and leisure facilities for young people in Horsham District based on sex-based equality and inclusivity. It's been a substantial piece of work that started back with the establishment of the Task and Finish Group back in July 23. I had one question concerning the High Court judgment in April 22 regarding gender and biological sex, but this was felt not to affect the findings. I assume you've all read the report in advance of the meeting, so I'm going to hand over to Councillor Bateman to provide a report on the Task and Finish Group. Thank you.
So the Task and Finish Group obviously took quite some time to put its findings together. The work involved speaking to teenage girls throughout the district. We conducted focus groups at Malay, at Collier's, at the Weald and with the Youth Forum. We also provided surveys trying to get as broad a range of feeling from the teenagers within the district as possible to try and establish whether or not our outdoor sports and leisure facilities are working and providing what girls in the district need. Alongside this, we also conducted a lot of research as to what is already... We also referred to all the other reports and surveys and academic literature that is out there that has been looking at providing spaces for girls. And the conclusion we gave to was that whilst the girls in the district were not reporting any great issues with our facilities, neither were they particularly saying that they were providing best practice. With that in mind, and with the other reports and research that was out there, the Task and Finish Group felt that it was probably worthwhile asking for our policies to be updated, particularly in light of the fact that we noticed that within our own policies we weren't actually referring very often to teenagers, let alone teenage girls, and we could see from those policies that the focus was very much on the younger child rather than the older child. And we thought it was very important, given that the Human Rights of the Child agreement talks about children being children up until the age 18, and we felt very much that it was important that we address that. Alongside that, we also felt that given that we could see that we've never actually been out and actually solicited the opinion of teenage girls, that maybe we could use this as an opportunity to perhaps design something from scratch where girls' opinions has been the leading voice in shaping what is there, because the literature and the research that exists shows a default male position when it comes to provision. So, there we go.
Thank you very much, Sam. And I'd like to thank you and all the others who worked on that Task and Finish Group, so thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Councillor Bateman on this report? Councillor Grant.
Chair, I don't have a question. I'd just like to congratulate Councillor Bateman on this Task and Finish piece. I think it sheds a light on something that's very, very important and maybe potentially frequently overlooked. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Vickers.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just very briefly, as part of the Task and Finish Group, I too would endorse all that Councillor Bateman has said and thank her for chairing that Task and Finish. Also to Judy, who did a huge amount of research and work that went into producing this report. So my grateful thanks.
Thank you very much. Anybody else got any questions? Okay, we have a recommendation here. It's long, so bear with me because I'm going to read it out. Okay. Recommendation. The committee is recommended 1, to note the findings of the Task and Finish Group. 2, to submit this report to the monitoring officer for consideration by the Cabinet to recommend that 1, the themes and principles in Appendix C are developed by officers into design guidance to assist in discussions with local developers. 2, that Horsham District Council Play and Strategy and Open Space Sports and Recreation Non-Technical Summary are updated to better reflect the needs of young people in the district, particularly girls and young women. 3, a request for new teenagers' play leisure facility, which is built with gender equality in mind, is considered for inclusion in the Horsham District Council Infrastructure Delivery Plan. Are we all in agreement with this recommendation?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 11. This is an update from the task and finish groups. We have the battery energy storage system. I just wanted everyone to know the acronym. This task and finish group was established following the outline planning application for Glebe Farm DC 212233. It was reviewed in a planning meeting last September 24, as there was a lithium storage facility close to the proposed development. I'm going to hand over to Councillor Ellis-Brown to provide us with an update as one of the task and finish group members. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The final meeting of the task and finish group was held on March the 27th. Since then, we've been working on the initial draft report and recommendations from those meetings. The final report is being will be reviewed shortly by the members of the task and finish group, with our intention to come back to the ONS meeting with the report in early June and the aim of going to Cabinet later in June. If those timeframes do slip, then I will let you know as Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and for all the work on that task and finish group. Does anybody have any questions for Councillor Ellis-Brown, please? Looks like you got off lightly. No questions. Okay, under task and finish groups 2, I think Councillor Clark has a suggestion for non-financial S106 task and finish group. A section 106 or an S106 is an agreement that is legally binding between developers and local planning authorities. It requires the developers to contribute towards infrastructure and services such as community facilities, public open spaces, transport improvements and affordable housing. The purpose of S106 agreement is to mitigate the impact of development on the local community and infrastructure. But how is this being complied with and checked? I think that's what Councillor Clark would like to discuss. So I'm going to hand over to Councillor Clark on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. S106 agreements, I mean, Horsham District Council and the officers have scrutinised very carefully all the financial arrangements, and basically all councillors will have seen the listings of 106 monies by parish council and will have seen the SIL come through. What seems to have escaped the attention possibly, or the focus, is that things like management issues, hard and soft landscaping provisions and other items such as land transfers to management companies hasn't been checked or verified or made sure, in my opinion, that the provisions of the planning conditions have been actually monitored or ensured that they go ahead. The recent draft audit report looked at the area, but only from a financial perspective and not from the, what I would call the softer areas, that way. A previous ONS work group had looked at the financial side, but not at the practical side, if I can put it that way. There are plenty of applications and there's plenty of evidence out there that a lot of things have not been delivered. In the suggestion form, I've put another one, DC 042763, DC 151084. I won't bore you with the details, but effectively some provisions are not being provided and some items remain outstanding. So the purpose of this task and finish group would be to look at a number of specific examples, to then see what processes and procedures we can put in place to tighten up on this. As an example, I'm fighting a management company right now for not maintaining internal footpaths properly, for example. There needs to be a clarity on the monitoring, management and implementation of non-financial conditions and clauses. And I think the purpose of this task and finish group would be to do this. Each planning application decision has a listing to be generated of what infrastructure and amenity was to be provided. And basically, I'm asking you as chair to set up a task and finish group to take this over and to take it to the end of a task and finish working party. Thank you, Chairman. I would also add that the intention had been to do this a year ago, but other task and finishes I deemed as chairman of Overview and Scrutiny were more urgent, like the best one, for example, particularly. So I parked this one for now. Thank you.
Thank you. I know we spoke about it some 6 months ago because we've had issues near where I live as well with such issues not being monitored properly. So I fully endorse a task and finish group on this topic. So if we're going to move forward with this suggestion, can I have a proposer, please? Thank you. Everyone's hands up. Thank you, Councillor Lambert. And a seconder, Councillor Vickers. Thank you very much. I'd like to propose that anybody interested to be on this task and finish group emails committee services. So we give a deadline, perhaps by the end of next week, the 16th, if you're interested in being on this task and finish group. I'd also like to ask Democratic Services if they could email all councillors, even outside of this group, whether they would like to be interested in joining, because it's good to get a wide range of people. I think we're looking probably for about 5 to 7 members would be ideal for this task and finish. And I'd like to make it an action point noted that the terms of reference are to be established by the task and finish group at their first meeting, and they can report back to the committee on those terms. Thank you. I don't know if I asked if we all agreed. Oh, we all agreed with that. We all agreed. Thank you. Okay, item number 12, the work programme. This is page 59 of your pack. This table shows the work programme for the committee 25-26. And on that table, in addition to the sort of standard items that we'll be looking at each meeting, there are other key elements such as the crime and disorder update in September. And I believe Paul Anderson will be including some detail on the leisure facilities contracts when they are ready to be scrutinised. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding the work programme? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know if it's appropriate at this point to bring it up or whether you would want to bring it up under item 14, but at last night's ONS meeting, effectively the point was made by Belinda Walters that at parish council meetings, you have the report of the minutes of the clerk, and generally what happens after that is the clerk goes through the action points from the minutes and sort of the actions taken forward. We don't have that in our agendas as they are set up. We didn't last night. That has been remedied at last night's meeting. And I would suggest that this committee does the same thing in the same way as was discussed with Democratic Services. And I bring it up at this point, if that's acceptable to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I think that Democratic Services, fantastic officer, has already beaten you to that, and we've agreed that we'd maintain an action log. So thank you very much.
Yeah, but we need to say it.
Yes. Thank you. So we're going to have an action log to make sure we have a log of all actions to make sure they're resolved.
Add an item on the agenda.
As an item on the agenda moving forward. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to item number 13. This is a Cabinet Forward Plan. The Forward Plan gives at least 28 days notice of any key decisions that Cabinet will make and contains notice of other decisions that are planned. There was a link provided in your pack. The link took you to sort of a list of everything from Highwood Community Venue, Snows, which is the Sussex North Offsetting Water Scheme, charging schedule, the Hackney Fair tariff review, governance arrangements for better Billingshurst infrastructure, and acquisition of 10 3 to 4 bedroom homes to accommodate larger families on the housing register, and recruit a housing management officer. Does anybody have any questions on the Forward Plan? Councillor Clark.
Sorry to be a pest. Just for clarification, the members of this committee, the scheme of the way the limits and the scheme of delegations have been changed in the new constitution. So a certain number of items that in the past would have been determined with cabinet being determined with cabinet members. What's important for us to realise is that those are subject to this committee and the other committee which met last night are subject to our scrutiny as well. So it's something we need to keep our eyes peeled and be aware of, that we can either call those in or scrutinise those as well. I think Councillor Finnegan made the point, but just to clarify, it's something we need to be aware of. For example, the snows thing going through sort of almost slipped through without questions being raised. So we need to be aware of this. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. As Councillor Clark says, there are some items that we've had on our agenda this evening which will be going to the Cabinet member for approval rather going, and that's a really good point to make. Thank you. So we all have to really scrutinise these documents that we receive. Thank you. Okay, item number 14, urgent business. We have no urgent business. So at, what are we? 6:32, I would like to bring this first meeting of Communities in Place Policy and Scrutiny meeting to a close, and I wish you all a safe journey home. Thank you very much.